Well. So, the previous episode, the advice I'd give you if I wasn't afraid of hurting your feelings, struck a nerve. I mean, a big nerve. My inbox exploded. My DMs are full. The comments section is, let's just say it's active, and I love it. Because you know what? The fact that so many of you are pushing back, questioning, defending, and yes, even getting a little angry, tells me that something I said hit home. And that's exactly what needed to happen. But here's the thing. A lot of you have the same questions. A lot of you are making the same arguments. And I think those arguments deserve a thoughtful response. So today, I'm doing something I don't usually do. I'm reading your messages, your questions in my mailbox, and I'm responding directly. Some of you are going to like what I have to say. Some of you are going to get even more frustrated with me. And that's okay, because we're not here for comfortable lies. We're here for uncomfortable truths. So buckle up. This is You Had Questions, I Have Answers. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with the number one response I got, and I'm paraphrasing, but it goes something like this. I hear what you're saying, but my situation is different. You don't know my partner, parent, job. You don't understand the complexities. It's not as simple as you made it sound. Okay, let me address this head on. You're right. I don't know your specific situation. I don't know your partner, your family dynamics, your financial constraints, your health issues, your cultural context. But here's what I do know. I've been doing this work for years. I've worked with hundreds of people. I've heard thousands of stories. And you know what I've learned? Everyone thinks their situation is different. Everyone thinks they're the exception. Everyone thinks, yeah, but you don't understand. My person is different because. And maybe they are. Maybe your situation has unique complexities that I can't fully grasp in a 30-minute podcast episode. But here's the question I need you to ask yourself. Is your situation actually different? Or are you just looking for a reason why the hard advice doesn't apply to you? Because I notice a pattern. The people who push back the hardest with my situation is different are usually the people who need the advice the most. They're the ones who've been in the same toxic relationship for 5 years. They're the ones who've been complaining about their job for 3 years but haven't updated their resume. They're the ones who go to therapy but never do the homework. And when someone finally tells them the truth, that they're choosing to stay, that they have more power than they think, that they're participating in their own suffering, they retreat into, but my situation is different. Look, I'm not saying there aren't real constraints. There are. Financial abuse is real. Immigration status complications are real. Disability limitations are real. Children's needs are real. Health insurance tied to a job is real. I'm not dismissing any of that, but what I'm saying is this. Even within those constraints, you have more choices than you think you do. You have more agency than you're currently exercising. And the first step to finding those choices is to stop telling yourself that you're uniquely trapped. So when you say my situation is different, what I hear is I'm not ready to change yet, and I need a reason why the advice doesn't apply to me. And that's okay. You don't have to be ready. But at least be honest about it. Don't pretend you're trapped when what you really mean is I'm scared or I'm not ready or I don't want to face the discomfort of change. Those are valid feelings, but they're not the same as being genuinely stuck. Next question, and this one came up a lot. You're being too harsh, you're judging people, you don't understand how hard it is, you're victim blaming. Okay, let's unpack this. First of all, I want to be really clear. There is a massive difference between holding someone accountable and victim blaming. Victim blaming says, it's your fault this happened to you. You deserved it. You brought this on yourself. That's not what I'm saying, ever. What I am saying is, this is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to do something about it. Those are two completely different things. When I say you're choosing to stay, I'm not saying you're responsible for the abuse. I'm saying you're responsible for your response to it. When I say stop making excuses, I'm not saying your struggles aren't real. I'm saying your excuses are keeping you stuck. When I say do the work, I'm not dismissing how hard it is. I'm saying that hard work is the only path to change. And as for being too harsh, let me ask you something. Has being gentle worked? Has being soft and understanding and validating every excuse actually helped you make meaningful changes in your life? Or have you spent years in therapy, years reading self-help books, years watching motivational content, and you're still in the same place? Look, I'm not harsh for the sake of being harsh. I'm direct because directness is what creates change. You know what's actually harsh? Letting you stay comfortable in your dysfunction because I'm too afraid to tell you the truth. You know what's actually unkind? Watching you suffer and nodding along sympathetically while you make the same bad decisions over and over. I'd rather risk hurting your feelings for 5 minutes and potentially changing your life than protect your feelings and watch you stay stuck for 5 more years. Here's what I've learned. The people who accuse me of being too harsh are usually the people who aren't ready to change yet. And they're looking for a reason to dismiss what I'm saying. Because if I'm too harsh or too judgmental, then they don't have to actually sit with the discomfort of what I said. They can just write me off as mean and go back to their comfort zone, but you're still listening to this episode, which tells me something in you knows I'm right. So ask yourself, am I actually being too harsh, or am I saying things you don't want to hear? Next question, and this is an important one. What about people who literally cannot leave? What about people in abusive relationships with no financial resources? What about people with disabilities? What about people with children? Your advice is privileged and doesn't account for real barriers. This is a fair critique, and I want to address it thoughtfully. You're right. Not everyone can pack a bag and walk out tomorrow. There are real, legitimate barriers that make leaving difficult or even dangerous. If you're in an abusive relationship and you have no income or access to money, no support system, children you're protecting, immigration status concerns, disability that limits your independence, safety concerns about what will happen if you leave. These are real obstacles, and I'm not dismissing them. But here's what I need you to understand. Even in those situations, you still have choices. They might be limited choices, they might be hard choices, but they exist. When I say you're choosing to stay, I don't mean you're casually deciding to hang around because it's fun. I mean that between the options available to you, however limited they are, you're choosing the option that feels safest or most manageable right now. And sometimes that is staying. Sometimes staying is legitimately the least dangerous option in the moment. But, and this is crucial, even when staying is the current choice, you can simultaneously be working toward a future where leaving is possible. Here's what that looks like. If you have no financial resources, you can start saving small amounts of cash, having a separate bank account, building credit in your name, documenting assets. If you have no support system, you can reach out to domestic violence organizations, find online support groups, identify one safe person to confide in. If you have children, you can document the abuse, talk to their teachers or pediatrician, create a safety plan that includes them. If you have disability concerns, you can connect with disability advocacy organizations, research accessible housing options, apply for benefits you might be eligible for. Every situation has some lever you can pull, some small action you can take that moves you incrementally toward freedom. And here's the thing, the people who truly cannot leave are usually not the people getting defensive about my advice. The people with legitimate, life-threatening barriers aren't sitting around saying, my situation is different. They're actively researching options, calling hotlines, and making escape plans, even if those plans take months or years to execute. The people who push back are usually the people who could leave but are afraid to. And there's a big difference. So let me be clear. If you are genuinely trapped, truly trapped, with no options, no resources, and no way out, my advice is not directed at you. You're doing the best you can in an impossible situation, and I have nothing but compassion for you. But if you have friends who would let you stay with them, family who would help you, a job that could support you, savings you could access, and you're still not leaving, then you're not trapped. You're scared. and those are two different things. Fear is valid, but don't confuse fear with impossibility. All right, next question. This one came up a lot. You said people don't change, but my partner, parent, friend is trying. They're in therapy, they're reading books, they're making an effort. Doesn't that count for something? Okay, let's talk about this. Yes, effort counts for something. I'm not completely cynical. I do believe people can change under very specific circumstances, but here's what you need to understand. Trying is not the same as changing, and effort without results is just effort. Let me give you the criteria I use to assess whether someone is actually changing or just performing change to keep you around. 1. Are they taking full accountability? Not, I'm sorry you feel that way. Not, I was stressed so I acted that way. Not, I learned this from my parents. Full accountability sounds like, I did this. It was wrong. I hurt you. I take full responsibility, and I'm actively working to ensure it never happens again. If they're not taking full, unconditional accountability, they're not actually changing. 2. Are they doing the work even when you're not watching? Are they going to therapy consistently or only when you threaten to leave? Are they practicing new behaviors or only apologizing after the fact? Are they reading those books and actually applying what they learn, or just performatively highlighting passages to show you? Real change happens in private. If their effort is all for show, it's manipulation, not transformation. 3. Are you seeing consistent, sustained change over time? Anyone can be good for a week. Anyone can keep a promise for a month. But is the change still there 6 months later? A year later? If they're cycling between trying really hard and back to old patterns, they're not changing. They're just cycling. 4. Are they changing because they want to or because you want them to? This is the big one. If they're only working on themselves to keep you from leaving, the change is fake. As soon as they feel secure that you're staying, the effort will stop. Real change comes from internal motivation. They have to want to be better for themselves, not just to manipulate you into staying. So when you tell me they're really trying, I need you to answer those 4 questions honestly. Are they taking full accountability? Are they doing the work privately? Is the change consistent over time? Are they motivated internally or just trying to keep you around? If the answer to any of those is no or I'm not sure, then they're not actually changing. They're just performing change long enough to get you to drop your boundaries. And here's the hardest truth. Even if they are genuinely changing, you're not obligated to stay and watch. You're not required to give them a front row seat to their redemption arc. You don't owe them the opportunity to become a better person at the expense of your own well-being. If someone has hurt you deeply, consistently, over a long period of time, and they're finally working on it, that's great. I genuinely hope they succeed. But you can hope they succeed from a distance. You can wish them well without subjecting yourself to more potential harm while they figure their shit out. Your healing is more important than their growth. Question 5. You don't understand cultural or religious obligations. In my culture, you don't just cut off your parents or leave your spouse. Your advice is very Western and individualistic. This is a really important critique, and I want to address it with nuance. You're absolutely right that I'm speaking from a Western individualistic framework, and I recognize that not everyone operates within that framework. In many cultures, family is paramount. Community takes precedence over individual needs. There are religious or cultural values that prioritize maintaining relationships, honoring elders, and staying in commitments, even when they're difficult. I respect that. I'm not here to tell you to abandon your culture or dismiss your values, but here's what I will say. Culture and religion should not be used as weapons to keep you in abusive or harmful situations. If your culture values family, that's beautiful. But if your family is abusive, culture doesn't require you to accept abuse. If your religion emphasizes forgiveness, that's powerful. but forgiveness doesn't require you to keep subjecting yourself to ongoing harm. If your community prizes loyalty, that's admirable, but loyalty to people who consistently hurt you is not noble, it's self-destructive. I've worked with people from all kinds of cultural backgrounds, and you know what I've noticed? The people who use culture or religion as a reason to stay in harmful situations are often misunderstanding or misapplying their own cultural or religious teachings. Most religious traditions actually have teachings about protecting yourself, about righteous anger, about when it's appropriate to create distance from harm. Most cultural traditions have nuance about what family loyalty actually means. But those nuances get ignored when culture or religion becomes an excuse to avoid making hard decisions. So here's what I'd ask you to do. Instead of accepting the version of your culture or religion that you've been taught by the people who benefit from you staying compliant, go deeper. Talk to religious leaders who specialize in abuse situations. Research how your cultural heroes handled conflict and boundaries. Find examples within your own tradition of people who protected themselves while still honoring their values. I guarantee you'll find that your culture and religion have more room for self-protection than you've been led to believe. And if your specific community doesn't support you protecting yourself from harm, then maybe the problem isn't your desire for safety. Maybe the problem is that your community has distorted beautiful cultural values into tools of control. You can honor your culture without sacrificing your well-being. You can respect your religion without accepting abuse. And anyone who tells you otherwise is not protecting your culture. They're protecting their power over you. Next question. I've tried to leave before. I've tried to set boundaries before. I've tried to change before. It didn't work. So why should I believe it will work this time? This is such an important question because it's where a lot of people get stuck. You tried to leave and you went back. You tried to set boundaries and you caved. You tried to change your life and you gave up. And now you're thinking, what's the point? I'm just going to fail again. Here's what I want you to understand. Failing doesn't mean you can't succeed. It means you learned what doesn't work. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb on his first try. He tried thousands of times. And he didn't see those as failures. He saw them as learning what didn't work. Same principle applies here. When you tried to leave before and went back, what happened? What pulled you back? Was it financial pressure, emotional manipulation, loneliness, guilt, hoovering? Okay, now you know that's the vulnerability you need to plan for next time. When you tried to set boundaries before and they got violated, what happened? Did you not enforce consequences? Did you communicate them unclearly? Did you cave under pressure? Okay, now you know what to do differently next time. Every failure is actually data. It's information about what works, what doesn't, and what you need to do differently. The only true failure is not trying at all. Going back to a relationship 7 times and finally leaving on the 8th? That's not failure. That's persistence. Setting a boundary and having it violated, then setting it again and enforcing it. That's not failure. That's growth. Starting therapy and quitting, then starting again and sticking with it. That's not failure. That's learning what you need. Here's what I need you to hear. You are not a failure because change is hard and takes multiple attempts. You're a human being doing a difficult thing. And the fact that you're listening to this episode, that you're still trying, that you're still fighting for yourself even after setbacks, that tells me you have everything you need to succeed. You just need to try one more time. And then, if necessary, one more time after that. Success is not about never falling down. It's about getting up one more time than you fall. Last question, and this might be the most important one. How do I know if I'm making excuses or if my reasons for not changing are actually valid? This is the million-dollar question, right? Because everyone thinks their reasons are valid. So let me give you a framework to assess this honestly. Ask yourself these questions. 1. If this situation were happening to your best friend, what would you tell them? If your best friend came to you and described your exact situation, same relationship, same job, same family dynamic, what advice would you give them? If you tell them to leave, to set boundaries, to make a change, but you're not doing those things yourself, that's a pretty good indicator that you're making excuses. 2. Are your reasons keeping you safe or are they keeping you comfortable? Valid reasons prioritize safety. Excuses prioritize comfort. I can't leave because he's threatened to hurt me and I don't have a safety plan yet. That's a valid reason. I can't leave because I don't know how I'll meet new people and I'll be lonely. That's an excuse. Both are real feelings, but one is about safety, one is about comfort. 3. Are you actively working toward change, even if you can't make it today? If you have real barriers, financial, logistical, safety related, are you taking steps, however small, toward creating options? Or are you just repeatedly listing the barriers without doing anything to address them? People with valid reasons are problem solving. People making excuses are just explaining why they can't. 4. Have you sought outside perspective? Have you talked to a therapist, a domestic violence advocate, a trusted friend, a career counselor, someone outside your situation who can give you objective feedback? Because sometimes we're too close to our own situation to see clearly. If you've talked to multiple people and they're all telling you the same thing, that you have more options than you think, that your reasons sound like excuses, that you're capable of making this change, maybe they're right. 5. What's your timeline? If you tell me I can't leave right now because reason, I want to know. When? When will you be able to leave? What needs to happen first? What's your plan? If you have a timeline and a plan, even if it's 6 months or a year away, that's legitimate. If your answer is, I don't know, or someday, or when things are different, that's an excuse masquerading as a reason. Here's the bottom line. Valid reasons come with action plans. Excuses come with explanations about why action isn't possible. Valid reasons have timelines. Excuses have indefinite delays. Valid reasons seek solutions. Excuses seek validation for inaction. So look at your own situation and be ruthlessly honest. Which category do you fall into? All right, we've covered a lot today. And I know some of you are still frustrated with me. Some of you still think I don't understand. Some of you are still looking for the loophole, the exception, the reason why the hard advice doesn't apply to you. And that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to take my advice. You're a grown adult with agency, and you get to decide how you live your life. But before we go, I want to leave you with one more thought. What if I'm right? What if you do have more power than you think? What if the barriers you're facing are real but not insurmountable? What if you've been telling yourself a story about why change is impossible and that story has become your prison? What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is your willingness to try one more time? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's fair that you have to do the hard thing, but I am saying you can do hard things. You've already done hard things. You've survived situations that should have broken you. You've endured pain that would have destroyed other people. So I know that if you decide to do this, you can. The question isn't can you? The question is will you? And only you can answer that. All right, that's all I've got for you today. If you have more questions, more pushback, more thoughts, email them to me. I read everything, and who knows, maybe we'll do another one of these episodes. Until next time, stop making excuses, start making moves. You've got this. See you in the next one.